Welcome, everybody, to the Scott DeConing Leadership Podcast. This is episode number 11. Once again, I'm here with my good friend, Hugo Isles. How are you, sir?
I'm doing pretty good there, Scott. How are you doing?
Doing well, doing well. Thank you again for
That's
joining
good.
me.
Right.
Excellent, excellent. So today we're going to talk about something that could really make or break a company. We've seen it where it has worked really well, and we've also seen where it's declined and the pros and cons for both. So we're going to talk about that. It is basically, what is the morale at your company? Now, when we take a look at the definition of morale, the best definition we could find was from the Merriam-Webster dictionary, and it basically says the definition of morale is the mental and emotional condition as of enthusiasm, confidence, or loyalty of an individual or group with regards to the function or tasks at hand. So what we're going to talk about, and I'm going to take a minor detour here in just a second, but what we're going to talk about is, what is morale? What are the benefits when it's high? What are the benefits or the problems when it's low? And if it is low, how can you raise it? Okay, so we're not going to get into a lot of detail on how you can raise it, because that could probably be an 8-hour course in itself. But we're going to give you a quick overview, and hopefully we can help you guys down the road with that if you're in this position. So I do want to take a quick break here and just remind you about Movember. It is currently November 17th, 2020. We are in the middle of a pandemic. For us here in Canada, I believe it's the second wave that is just hitting. But with everything going on, there's a whole lot of additional anxiety, a whole lot of additional stress. And when you have stress, you just have both mental and physical problems. So that's why in the month of November, I am here to support Movember. And I have a Movember page. You'll find that in the description or the show notes, depending on how you're consuming this information. And you can see here that I have started growing a beard. I have no hair up top, but I have some on my face. And Hugo, I see you have a beard as well.
That's right. And not too much up top, but lots of beard, long beard.
we're in the same boat. We're in the same
Exactly.
boat. And we both have the wisdom stripes, the gray hair.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah. I'm calling them wisdom stripes. Or I'm dyeing them at night. I don't know what's happening. But either way, they just come out of nowhere. But anyway, yeah. So
Yes.
it's I found an interesting article when I did a search yesterday that basically says that stress can actually take years off your life. It is amazing not the benefits, but the actual damage that internal stress can cause. That's why I think this initiative is such a big push, because this is focused on men's mental health, of which I am an expert because I do have mental health going on. It's a whole lot better than what it was, but obviously I was in a rough spot for the longest time, and not out of the woods, but definitely in a better position. So definitely something I'm passionate about.
Same here.
Excellent. So once again, I'm going to post the link to my Movember page and the description. If you're hearing this like 2-3 years down the road, please feel free to donate. As far as I'm concerned, the page isn't going away. My goal for the month is $200. Again, we're in the middle of a pandemic. I haven't been doing very well, but it is what it is. And any money raised or even awareness is worth it. So, okay, we are going to jump into morale. Now, a big thing about morale, as it said in the definition that we really took out of that, is the loyalty that your team has to the company, you as a leader, the rest of the team. Morale can really make or break what your company, what your team is doing. Would you agree with that, Hugo?
I agree 100%. That's right.
Yeah. So when we take a look at morale is basically, when morale is high, everything flows. Everything is just, you can ask somebody to do any job, even if it's a job they hate, and they're all in. Yep, let me do this. I want to go and clean the toilets, whatever it is. And that's because not only do they have trust in you as a leader, but they also have trust in the company. They know exactly where it's going. They know exactly where they stand. and everything's in alignment.
And what's beautiful about it is that the communication is also transparent between the leader and the person that he's leading, kind of thing. And morale is almost assumed, like, you know, it's something that just comes with you know, taking the right steps and having good conversations that build high trust. And hopefully at some point there'll be some type of empowerment between the leadership and the person that's they're leading, and then morale is just naturally just it produces itself from that point.
That's right. Absolutely. And it could go up or down, and just because it's high one day doesn't mean it can't start going down the next.
That's right.
It's like a living thing. You really have to work at maintaining it. You really do.
I think I see a really great opportunity for leaders to be as transparent as they can, because you know, if the opposite of that is just basically stonewalling everyone, and they're feeling a sense of, well, I can't say anything, otherwise my job will be in jeopardy. You know, whereas if there's proper dialogue and that leads to transparent communication, you know, you'd be in a better position to even receive you know, ideas or feedback from the bottom up.
That's right.
That could be quite helpful as well.
That's right. Well, and one of the best methods that I've seen is your cascading
waterfall model.
Yeah, because again, you have that sponge, that Y committee. It's hit or miss, and everybody feels heard.
That's right.
Right. Whether an initiative cannot be implemented into the company for whatever reason, at least the person or the people, the focus group know why, and they can pass that on to everybody else. So so I really like that about your cascading waterfall.
And it's a proactive approach. So
exactly. So we found this Forbes document that I'm just going to reference here as we talk about morale, because it really does emphasize why morale can really make or break your company. So the first thing that it talks about, and there's 10 points in this document, but the very first thing it talks about is that highly engaged teams show 21% greater profitability. Now, this was done by a survey from the website Gallup, Gallup, and they've actually brought in a number of employees, and they basically asked them a bunch of questions regarding this, and they realized from that number that it's engaged teams will show 21% greater profitability. So much so that teams who score in the top 20% of engagement will see 41% reduction in absenteeism and 59% less turnover. So not only will they not call in sick as much, but they will actually want to stay when things get tough.
And that's what we need. That's what you need. To stick when it gets tough, wanted to be there and to be engaged.
That's right.
To take action. And we're talking about every level: the middle management, frontline, and leadership as well.
Absolutely. Coming from a former training role, I can say that there is a ton of money that goes into training. Whether it comes, and it starts with hiring, like you gotta recruit people to actually do the hiring of these folks. Then you got to actually properly train them to get them on the floor, and the paper involved with that, not only from the participants, but also from the instructors. There's a crazy amount of paper. And when you have a lot of turnover, it's more cost, right? It's more money. So when 59% of people were less likely to turn over when they had higher engagement, which is actually really interesting. The next thing it talks about here that's actually quite interesting is 89% of HR leaders that were surveyed agree that ongoing peer feedback and check-ins are key for successful outcomes. And the reason I find this to be very important is the fact that this really does support what we've been talking about all these episodes. Not only do you need to focus on the negative feedback, or when we say negative, I'm going to reframe that to say constructive feedback, but it is critical that you also talk about the positive. You have to talk about the positive feedback. More than just walking by and saying, hey, how's it going today? Are you all right? Because that's not going to do it enough. 89% of HR leaders agree with this statement, according to this Forbes document.
Excuse me there, Scott. I was just grabbing
Sure.
one of my favorite books on fundamentals of organizational behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And morale is a big topic in this particular type of study.
Excellent.
And it's actually a text at the University of Calgary for their business students.
Right.
Morale is sort of like key. It's almost an indicator, I guess, for some KPIs. Like it's to show what's working and what's not working.
That's right.
And morale is sort of like enthusiasm. Either you have it, you got good morale, or you don't.
That's right. That's right.
You can't teach it. You can't train someone to have good morale. They have them with good morale in general, or they don't.
And the beautiful part about it is, if you don't have it, you can get it back. Yes, it involves a ton of work, but it is something that can be built back. People can have that enthusiasm. They're gonna. You really do have to get past that initial, like, okay, I was burned before whatever happened in the past happened. Once you move past that, though, everything just grows, and trust builds again. And it's a long road, but you can get there.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the nail there, Scott. Like, trust is the key, eh? Because one thing I've been taught is, as human beings, when we meet someone for the first time, we're expected to have our respect for that person is already high, but our trust is not quite high because they haven't. That takes time. They have to prove themselves. So the respect is high, but the trust, it comes with time. Absolutely. Real trust.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And there's a big difference between respect and trust.
Yeah.
Something else that I find interesting here, that the third point says that employees who feel like their voices have been heard are 4.6 times more likely to feel engaged to perform their best work. And it comes back to recognition, feedback, but that's not enough. It comes down to collaborative groups, collaboratively like-minded employees, having that communication as a two-way street. So if an employee is seeing something wrong that's happening with the process, the best thing I can think of to illustrate this would be like an assembly line for those building cars. If there's something wrong with one part of the assembly line, the whole thing shuts down. But if the company keeps saying, no, it's working fine, trust me, everything's working good, but they're not the ones doing the actual job, that's when morale is going to start to go down, because they're like, well, I guess I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, even though I know it doesn't work, or there's a faster way of doing it, that kind of thing. So when 4.6 times more likely to be engaged and do their best work if they feel heard when something's going wrong.
Maybe we can talk about that a little bit for those of us that don't know what that looks like. What do you mean by feeling heard? What does that look like?
Good question. In the book that I'm currently reading, which you and I have talked about, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Right.
And I believe I even mentioned this in the last episode because it's one that's really hit me hard, is as a leader, listening to understand. A lot of people tend to listen to reply, so much so that they actually listen to interrupt. Now, if we
I
actually
see.
listen to understand, we're
Mm-hmm.
asking questions to get to the deeper part of what the situation is, what is needed.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm actually wanting somebody to feel heard
Mm-hmm.
in a one-on-one conversation, I could say, so if I'm understanding correctly, this is what the concern is. And
Mm-hmm.
they're either going to say, yes, that's exactly it, or no,
Mm-hmm.
here's what it is. And even if they go down that route, you can be like, oh, okay, I misheard. Let's talk
Mm-hmm.
about it. Now, another way that an employee could actually feel heard is, and this is one that I'm really, really working on harnessing, is going up to somebody and saying, you know what, I know that you're really good at doing this part of the job. Here's what I'm thinking of doing. I would love your opinion on it. Out of the blue, just, I'd love to get your opinion. I think you would add a lot of value to this, and I'd really love to know what you think about it. And in that moment, somebody's gonna feel like, wow, they really appreciate my opinion. This is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So 4.6 times greater if they feel heard. And those are just a couple of things, just off the top of my head, that could fix that.
I have a sentence that kind of covers that a little bit in the book I'm reading.
Perfect.
Fundamentals of Organizational Behavior. It says here, because the question is, how do you be that leader that deserves to have a high morale or be in a high morale environment? It says, respect, a leader that has respect for the individual. So leaders who tells the truth, keep promises,
right,
and a fair show respect for the followers. And respect means treating people with dignity.
Ooh.
And that's huge. And I'm going to explain what that looks like.
Absolutely.
If I go to the leader and I said, well, I have an observation that I saw that I think I want to bring it up with, kind of thing, and it sounds like something that needs to be heard at a higher level. And the person turns to me and say, you know what, thank you for that. I'll take it up. I'll take it up to to leadership.
Right.
And then you don't hear anything of it. There's no feedback. There's nothing. It almost, you feel like you just gave you're just talking to a stone wall.
that follow-up is almost as important as actually listening to understand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think the follow, even if it's a bad news, the follow-up is such, it speaks volumes with regards to living. At least you leave them with a dignity where they feel like, wow, I'm being heard because I said something and that was interesting and it was taken up, and now I see there's a follow-up that they're gonna do this or that or what's gonna happen.
That's right.
So it makes me feel like, even though I am not the CEO, within my own ranks, I'm also a leader. In my sphere of influence, in my circle of influence, I'm a leader as well.
That's right. And again, my opinion is valued.
Yeah.
I was able to bring it up, even if it's, again, something that's not able to be implemented.
Right.
If I come back and say, here's why it wasn't implemented, then I at least, as the person bringing the idea, I at least know that you followed your word, you kept your promise. Like I love the way it says it there. And you went to talk to the people who make those decisions, because you wouldn't have the answer unless you went and talked to them. And another word that I'm going to throw in there that we've actually said quite a lot in this podcast is, it also comes down to integrity.
Yeah.
If you are going to do something, you actually have to go and do it.
Yeah. It's so funny because this book spells it out in a way that I was like, are you sure? Can we really say that? Like, it says things like leaders that tell the truth. Like, well, that's assumed, right? I expect my leaders to tell the truth. But it says leaders that keep promises, right? And I was like, wow, that's a big one, especially if you're a dad and you have a kid, and you tell your kid, okay, after you do this, we're gonna go over to the park and play.
That's
and the kid is so excited. Yeah, we're gonna go to the park and play. And then something comes up and he's like, sorry, babes, but I can make it up to you. We'll get pizza tonight. It's not the same because you already made that promise. And the kid you see the look in their face, kind of thing. But keeping promises, everyone has a kid on the inside of them that don't want to don't want to be disappointed. So
That's right.
keeping promises really goes a long way with morale, for good morale.
Absolutely.
Fairness, leaders who are equitable ensure that the followers get their fair share for the contribution in the organization. So fairness,
Mm.
recognizing like kudos,
Yep.
good works, people that are going above and beyond, doing saying good things. And just
Hmm.
like Scott, you were saying, not just taking the negative feedback, but also the positive feedback,
Right.
because it really speaks well of the ranks, and it
Absolutely.
speaks well of what everybody is doing in their own circle of influence.
I think I completely agree, and that's just came to my mind. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. But when you call somebody in for a positive feedback session, knowing me, if you were to come up and say, you did this better than whatever it is, I mean, I'm just spitballing here a little bit, but if they did the job better than what was expected, and you're calling them in to tell them that,
Mm,
knowing me, if you were to tell me that, I'd be like, well, thanks,
okay.
right? But I think what has to happen, and it's on us as leaders,
Mm,
is to actually take a second and celebrate that win,
mm,
and to say, do you understand how big of a deal this is?
yeah.
You did this and you weren't even asked. Like, this isn't even, especially if it's something that's not really even part of their role.
Yeah.
They just took the initiative.
Hmm.
Like, you as the leaders, we should almost say, how do you want to be recognized? Do you want me to send out an email? Do you want me to just, should we hold you a party? I mean, that may be a little
Hmm.
extreme, but
I understand what you're saying. It should be
but
celebrated. Even if it's a small win, it's
absolutely.
still a win.
Yes.
A win is a win, right?
Yes. To go home an hour early with pay,
Yeah.
right? Something to say, you know
Yeah.
what? We just want to show our appreciation.
Hmm.
I know it's something that you just did out of the goodness of your heart, but it really
Hmm.
does mean a lot to us. And actually
Hmm.
take that initiative and
Hmm.
show the appreciation. I think and
Well,
this just came to me.
I just had to comment what one leader did in my case when I brought up something that was interesting. He
Hmm.
says, "Look, anytime you want to talk about anything,
Hmm.
I will make that time for you."
Mm.
And I'm like, "Wow, that really made me feel like I want to be engaged. I want
Right.
to, he will
Yep.
make that time for me." I was like,
Yeah.
"Thank you so much." You know what I
Right.
mean? So I know it depends on the person. Every person is different, but for me, to hear that and to know that he means it,
Hmm.
it did it for me. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
And how do you know that he meant it?
I observed him.
Hmm.
He's the kind of leader that he doesn't just talk the talk, he walks the walk.
Mm.
And of course, I'll tell you later who this person is. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's a kind of individual that when that person says they'll make time for you,
Hmm.
he's very serious about that.
Right. Because he has integrity.
Right?
He keeps
Exactly.
his
Integrity.
promises.
Right.
Right. And I'm not exactly sure who this is, but just based off the story, one of the reasons that I could tell that you knew that it was real was because it was authentic.
Right. And it was the timing when he said it too. Just like when
Mm.
we were talking and everything, and we were about to go separate ways, and he says, "If you don't remember anything, remember this. That
Yeah.
I'll definitely." You know what I mean?
Yep.
So that left the dialogue on such a high level of trust,
Right.
and I felt that, to me, that was empowerment for me.
Yeah.
And
Well done.
that moment, I felt like, he can do no wrong, and
Hmm.
because of his leadership, I want to do my job even better.
Right.
you
Right.
know,
Yeah. You
and
want to
that
go to bat for him.
exactly. And just
Hmm.
imagine taking that experience and multiplying it by 1,000.
Mm.
You'll have a company that has really good and a high level of healthy morale.
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and it'll get to a point too, and I've seen this with companies as well, where if one person's negative,
Hmm.
they're actually the odd one out.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that is a
it's true.
really good place to be.
That's a good place to be. Yeah, that's so true.
That's a really
It's
good place to be.
Yeah, because you can't. There'll always be people out there that's going to say something negative based on this or
Of
that,
course.
and some of them are authentic and sincere,
Hmm.
and some of them aren't, right? But
That's right.
it's really interesting when the majority of the group is sort of like, gung ho and positive and kind of thing, and then
Yep.
you get a sour Sally, and he's like, "Come on, we don't really want to hear this right now," that
No,
kind of thing.
no,
So
you're ruining my vibe. What are you
you're
doing?
ruining everyone's vibe.
That's right.
You know?
That's right. Yeah, they actually feel so uncomfortable with their negativity that they actually have to leave. It's
Yeah,
it's a beautiful place to be.
I think so.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Just looking at time, I think we're gonna have to do a part 2 of this, but I do want to go over one more piece here, and then we'll go over the last 5 here when we do this part 2. But number 4 here says 90s, and here's a word that keeps showing up. We've talked about this many times, but here's just another stat that supports it. 96% of employees believe that showing empathy is an important way to advance employee retention.
Mm.
And in the actual part of the paragraph, and I'll post this link for people to actually go ahead and read it. As I jump down, it says employees are nearly unanimous that agreeing on the importance of empathy, yet 92% feel that empathy remains undervalued. Moreover, until 92% of CEOs feel like their organization is empathetic. 50% of the employees believe that the CEO is empathetic. So those are just numbers.
50%, you said.
50% believe that of the employees believe that their CEO is empathetic. And I'm going to say, without knowing what company this is, I'm going to say those CEOs are actually going and talking to the people.
Right.
Leaving the office, even though there's a ton of work to do, there will always be a ton of work to do. But if we're not making the time to actually go down and talk to the people who are doing the job every day, especially if you see somebody, and I think this is where empathy is best shown. If you see somebody who's being negative, and you as the leader, whether it's a CEO or not, can go up to them and say, I noticed that something's off. You want to talk about it? Is everything okay?
Yeah.
And if you're the person dealing directly with the company or the customers, and you have the CEO coming in, they're showing that kind of empathy,
that kind of care, yeah.
Right. And I've been that person dealing with the customers, and if they would have come to me and asked me that, I would have been like, the CEO cares about how I am. Like, who am I? Especially if it's a larger company, I was like, who am I? But it's up to us as leaders to actually take that initiative, go down and talk to those folks. So
yeah, basically, keep that dialogue open. I'm telling you, like the number one thing I'm seeing that can solve all of these issues that a lot of companies have is having the right conversation. And sometimes the right conversations is not always initiated by a leader or a CEO. Right. Sometimes the right conversation with the right attitude has a beautiful. It's like listening to a symphony, and then someone plays a beautiful harp or a trumpet or a saxophone, and it makes it sound even more beautiful. And sometimes that person is a frontline staff, someone who's just observing, and they can, because they have that the right attitude, to have the right conversation to the point where leadership hears about it and they want to continue hearing about it.
That's right.
And the reason why I think that leader is telling me he'll make time for me is what he's saying is that I want to hear what you have to say. That's what drove home to me. I want to hear what you have to say. Wow. Even though I'm really the leader, I still want to hear what you have to say. That's right. That spoke volumes.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And especially if it comes to changing process, trying to make things easier, things that are out of their control. If there is something that would actually be more efficient, and we were to actually implement that into our procedure, how much enthusiasm is that person going to have in doing that part of their job? Like, it's just going to be like, yep, this was my idea. Look at me go. Right. And but it's just, and all we did was we listened to what the concern was, and we actually identified, okay, is there a way that we can actually put this into our procedure to be more efficient? Because one, we're going to get faster products, and we're going to get more enthusiasm, right? So it's a win-win, really.
It is a win-win.
Yeah.
And we have to gain people's trust, and the only way you can really gain people's trust if you're authentic yourself, because they're looking at you and they say, okay, interesting, what kind of leader are you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And if you you're keeping promises, truthful, transparent, empathy, especially if you're dealing with someone who maybe is going through a tough time in their life, maybe who knows, a divorce, or someone passed away, or something like that.
Exactly.
To show that empathy, say, rather than pointing fingers and say you didn't do this. The question, which I love the way that Scott put it. He says, how are you doing? How are things? Is everything okay?
So simple.
It's so simple,
So
but
simple.
it just is it's a beautiful way of opening a dialogue that can lead to truth, right?
Absolutely.
And they can find out what's really going on with that individual person, and can deduce what they need to do to help, right?
Empathy is such a big part of the leadership game.
It's
all about how we act or interact with the people, not the operation. Like I think the last thing we've actually identified in any episode that we've recorded so far is how much better we can manage the operation.
Right.
Everything we've talked about, every single thing that I can think of, has been how do we manage our people better? How do we lead our people, inspire our people? It all comes back to our people, and our people will come back and help us. Like the very first point it said is that engaged people will increase profitability 21%. We're so focused on the product, charging more for the product. Let's focus on the people. The people are the key, and
Right.
that's why we're doing this, Hugo. I think is just to prove that point.
And I think Scott, that you just answered the $1 million question.
What's that?
And that how do you get your fellow workers to be engaged? How do you get them engaged in what the leadership have? And like you said, you focus on the people.
Focus on the people.
Have, and I keep stressing it, and I'm going to say it again, to have the right conversations and to create an environment for the right dialogue.
Right.
Speaks volumes, because sometimes the wisdom doesn't come from the top down. Sometimes the real insightful wisdom comes from the bottom up.
Absolutely.
And it's very humbling, and it's very it leaves that person with dignity and pride, and doing their job on what they do, and type of thing. And there's a lot of people in good companies that has so much wisdom.
That's right.
And understanding, if all they need is the right environment, the right dialogue, the right encouragement type thing, and you'd be like, whoa, mind blown. We just changed the entire morale of this entire company.
Yeah, and not with wisdom could also come experience, because I was actually just talking to a guy who was in an entry-level position. He'd been there for about a year, but nobody really knew that he actually had his a diploma in international relationships.
Okay.
So he actually knew some really high officials of other countries around the world. And for this company specifically, would have been a huge benefit for him to say, or for them to go to him and say, hey, do you mind making some connections for us so we can maybe go to these places or sell to these places, whatever it is, right? And so our people who work for us actually have a past, and that past may actually help us move them forward. One thing I want to end on here, just because we are running out of time, and again, I think we really do have to do a part 2 on this, is as the leader, you're not there to manage the operation, you're there to manage the people.
I want to say something interesting as well, please. I know you
Let's do it.
gotta end it because
Let's do it.
it's so funny. We're just talking about it, and I'm reading this book that's called Fundamentals of Organizational Behavior.
Yeah.
And it says the exact same thing.
No way.
It says, be empathetic. Before sending a message, put yourself in the recipient's shoes. What are his or her values, experiences, and frame of reference? What do you know about his or her education, upbringing, and background? Watch this now. That can give you added insight. It's right there.
I'm basically teaching at a university level.
Yeah,
that's what we're doing here.
Ladies and gentlemen, Scott.
Thank you.
He's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm here weekly.
Right?
Thank you.
The insight, you know, that wisdom that comes from the bottom up, right?
That's it.
Like, and they have that because they've been doing it over and over and over again, and they have that experience, and
absolutely.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And that would really boost morale. Yeah.
Oh, it's huge. Huge, absolutely. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Part 1. We could just keep talking about this, which is why I think we have to do at least a part 2. I can actually see us doing a part 3, to be honest. We'll see how this goes. But yeah, next week we'll definitely have to do a part 2. So, all right. Thank you once again for joining me on another podcast, Hugo.
Yes, you're welcome.
And we will talk to you on the next one.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. See you later, everybody.